Welcome to the Terry and Jesse Show. Every Monday, Father Charles Murr will be with us talking about the life of Christ and using Archbishop Fulton Sheen's book, and hopefully will help you fall deep in love with Jesus Christ. Father Murr, thanks for making this big commitment once a week to talk about the life of Christ using Fulton Sheen's book.
It's a commitment. Commitment's a joy. It's a joy, Terry.
Well, it is
joy.
for me too.
Terry, before we begin,
Absolutely.
you and I were having a conversation. I thought it was being taped.
Oh,
it wasn't being taped. Let's have it again, because I think some of the things that we said were very important, very, very good.
I would.
You want to go over those?
Yeah, I do. And I want to just say that we were talking before the show, and I said to Father Murr that I said, when I think of Fulton Sheen and what he's done for me on my Catholic faith 44 years ago, when I first heard Life is Worth Living on record, already on LPs, that dates me, and how it helped.
That does a little bit.
Yeah, fall in love with Jesus. I said to Father, today in the modern church, I believe that one of the reasons many people in the modern church hierarchy dislike Fulton Sheen is not just because he was a television Emmy Award-winning program. I believe because he talked so much about the cross. As a matter of fact, I don't think you can. He preached one thing about Christ and him crucified throughout his life. And for the modern church, especially, I will say the last 10 years, we haven't heard much about that. And if we did, that was kind of like poo-pooed. That's my take. But what about you?
Yeah, well, that's exactly true. It's exactly right. You hit it right on the head. It is the fear. As a matter of fact, Sheen calls it exactly that, fear of the cross.
Yeah.
He talks about a new phobia.
That's right.
And it is the fear of the cross. What is the cross? When Sheen is talking about that, he's talking about dying to oneself.
Yes.
He's talking about discipline. He's talking about sacrificing your goods for the good of others.
Amen.
That's the cross. That's the cross. And whether people know it or not, each one of us has a cross.
Amen.
A lot of people spend a lot of time of their life, they spend years avoiding it, looking at it, watching it, seeing it, examining it. But we all have a cross. We're given that in life. And Fulton J. Sheen I know he was big in your life. I know he really spoke to your soul, Terry.
Big time.
And I don't know that he turned you around, because I don't think you were ever on a bad path.
I was lukewarm though before Sheen. I was lukewarm, Father. I didn't really understand the series. Well, I was a child. Yeah, I was 14 when I first heard Fulton Sheen's. Yeah. So I was kind of like trying to figure things out, and he helped me keep track on the truth of the gospel, which I really hadn't had in my 14 years. You're still trying to figure things out, but he gave me direction that I'll never ever forget.
Yeah, it's true. He was he made a comment one time that I remember reacting to.
Okay.
He said that many parents had written him. Mm-hmm. Saying how surprised they were that their children were glued to the television watching him.
Yeah.
Their children who were not of any age to really understand what he was talking about, because Sheen talked about some heavy philosophy and heavy theology. He had a fantastic way about him, and this is his uniqueness. Mm-hmm. He could take the most complex philosophical, psychological, and theological arguments, digest them, and give them to his audience in a way that was palpable, that was understandable, and with always with just a delightful touch of, I would say, Irish humor.
Amen.
He's right? Amen. It's a little bit Irish. It's American, but a little bit Irish.
Oh yeah.
He's got that. But they were always surprised, these parents, that their children who could not understand him were glued to the television.
Yeah.
And he said this. He explained that this way. He said, I believe that children can see and understand sincerity.
Yes.
he said, I think they perceive sincerity. And when they see it and they find it, they're attracted to sincerity.
Amen.
That's why it's such a scandal. That's why it's so harmful. It's outrageously hurtful to play with the trust of those children.
Wow.
Right?
Amen.
That's but that's what he noticed. And it's true because his sincerity came across.
Yes.
Also something that I'd like to say.
Sure, tell
in my life, I listened to him when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
We all did. We all did. And we were, Terry, we were mesmerized.
Oh,
I didn't understand 80% of what he was saying,
Yeah.
but we were mesmerized by this man who so nobly explained seemingly with such great ease.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I read later on, I think he revealed that in, what is his autobiography?
Treasure in Clay.
Treasures in Clay. He said that for every 1 hour of preaching or television, a presentation, he spent 3 hours preaching in a mirror.
Yeah.
And he would do it in foreign languages.
That's right.
To get it more situated more solidly in him. Fantastic. But we saw that, and I didn't really appreciate Sheen until I made a retreat with him.
Yes.
Very near my priesthood,
Wow.
my ordination to priesthood. I think I was already a deacon, as a matter of fact.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to the Camaldolese monastery outside of Frascati in La Toscana in Tuscola, and right above the hills, in the hills right above Frascati. And I brought along a whole set of tapes. Were they called 8-track? No, not 8-track.
No,
what
cassette,
were they?
cassette tapes.
Cassette tapes. My gosh, Terry, it's rained a lot since then.
Yeah, you think?
My gosh. Anyway, I brought a whole set. They were in a plastic sort of suitcase.
Yes.
And I brought the whole thing with me, and for 1 week survived on Fulton J. Sheen alone.
Wow.
And it was absolutely fantastic. I gave 2 lectures to myself in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. Then, of course, there was mass and office between. And it was the most fulfilling retreat. I look back at it with almost with a beautiful nostalgia. It really helped make me cognizant of what I was going to do, what I was about to do to become a priest. He spoke to me fantastically. One other thing that I should mention, if I may.
Yes, please.
Over approximately 500,000 people converted to Catholicism from the United States alone in the 1950s.
Wow.
1940s and 50s. And many more than that converted, but 500,000 attributed their conversion to Fulton J. Sheen.
Yep. Amazing.
He was the man who caught their souls.
Incredible.
And brought them to Christ. So this man is a great man. And as I was saying too before the program began, to me, it doesn't make one bit of difference if he's a canonized saint or not at all. Because I pray to him every day. He's a saint as far as I'm concerned. And Terry, as I said before, if he's not in heaven, Terry, you and I.
Oh yeah.
What about us? Where are we destined for? Now that's it. But a magnificent man. I had the occasion to speak with him by phone.
Wow.
One time.
Wow.
He was at St. Agnes. He was at St. Agnes in the city, and I spoke by phone when I was a deacon. I wanted to meet with him. We couldn't meet, but I remember his kindness on the phone.
Incredible.
Now, I'll tell you something else too. Let me just say one other thing. This is something that you won't hear from anybody, I don't think.
Yeah.
The rector of St. Joseph Dunwoody
I know. Mm-hmm.
Seminary, right? The rector there, I should know his name. I should be ashamed that I forgot it. It's a good Irish name.
Is it O'Connor? O'Connor? No.
No.
Okay, because I know the seminary well, but okay.
I'm thinking O'Brien, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
But Actually, we were kind of close friends. That's why it embarrasses me.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, this getting old business
It's
is no
50
fun.
years
Terry.
ago. Come on, 40 years ago. Go ahead.
Yeah, but Terry, I had a worker with me for 4 years.
Yeah.
And the last time I saw her was 2 years ago. For 4 years, she worked for me.
Wow.
And it's been 2 years since I've seen her.
Yes.
I was trying to remember her name yesterday.
It happens.
Almost drove me crazy.
Yep.
Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked here. But
Yeah.
this man, when he was a seminarian,
Yes.
he later became the rector of the seminary. But when he was a seminarian for Cardinal Spellman,
Wow.
Spellman had a program set up. He wanted all of the seminarians in theology to be part of the staff at St. Patrick's Cathedral.
Wow.
For a week or 2 weeks. They would change so that they knew they could meet the Archbishop, they could meet the auxiliaries. There was more of a community, because New York is a very difficult place for people to know each other.
Father Murray, you're telling a story, and then I want to share back in 1978 what happened to me personally regarding Fulton Sheen. That was a really important connection for my apostolate here for the last 44 years. So let's continue that story you were telling.
Well, I was just trying to look up during the break.
Sure.
The name of the rector of Dunwoody, St. Joseph's Dunwoody, but I couldn't find it. If he's listening to this program, please forgive me, Father. It's my old age. It's not my high esteem for you.
Exactly.
Anyway, he was telling me that as a seminarian, he was assigned at this time to St. Patrick's, and it was during Holy Week. Mm-hmm. So Fulton J. Sheen was going to speak the 7 last words from the pulpit of St. Patrick's Cathedral.
Wow.
All right, so he arrived. And the rector at that time was a seminarian, so he was in charge of the door. Well, Bishop Sheen arrived, and there was absolutely no one in the house. No one was there.
Yeah.
And he looked around and he said, "Well, where is everybody? They're supposed to be here." He said, "Well, they're a little bit busy." Well, he didn't like that at all. He didn't like that at all because I don't know what, he had something to discuss with one or two of them, and he was a little bit upset, a little bit kind of nose out of joint over that, right? And this priest, who was a seminarian at the time, was a little bit scandalized by that.
Uh-huh.
Not scandalized, but he said, "Is this the great Fulton J. Sheen?" He was in his presence. He didn't know whether to melt or genuflect or what. And he was a little bit put off by that. Where is everybody? They should be here. That kind of thing. I remember we were at dinner in New York, and he looked right at me and said, "I've got to tell you." 20 minutes later, or a half an hour later, he stepped up to the pulpit in St. Patrick's Cathedral, and I was there, and he opened his mouth and began to speak about the Passion of Christ. And he said, anything that bothered me about him before melted away. He said it was absolutely gone. He said, "I'd never heard somebody speak that way," because he didn't just speak with an eloquent vocabulary that he had, and masterfully controlled the language just beautifully. Not just that, he knew what he was talking about because he lived what he was talking about, and that came through. Anyway, this priest said he was absolutely, just absolutely taken, inspired by this man. And he thought to himself, just a half an hour ago, I wasn't too crazy about the way he arrived at the door. He said,
I bet. Hey, he's human.
All of that melted away.
All of that
melted away.
Of course.
And this is what Fulton J. Sheen. Some people criticize him, Terry, when he was made bishop in Rochester.
Right.
They said he was not a good administrator.
Right. I've heard that.
whether he was or whether he wasn't. Let's say he wasn't. Let's say they're absolutely correct.
Fair enough.
So what? That was his gift. His gift wasn't to administer a diocese.
Right.
His gift was to preach Christ, and he did it on fire.
Amen.
Right?
Amen.
So
Just say this, Father Charles, is this. What happened to me back in 1978, many people realize, because I've put this in my book, How to Share Your Faith with Anyone. They say, what got you motivated? What got you fired up to start distributing Catholic audio talks? I said, well, it was Fulton Sheen. I listened to his records when I was getting some wisdom teeth pulled. And so for 2 or 3 days, I was out of commission.
but replenishing your wisdom.
Yeah, there you go. But replenishing my wisdom. Oh, that was a good connection. So I listened to these recordings for 3 days straight, okay, other than when I was sleeping. And I was so moved by it. I thought, wow, this is fantastic. So I wrote to the Propagation of the Faith, because it said Propagation of the Faith in 1865 records. So I wrote to them telling them, hey, I really like these records. Is it possible I could get permission to put these on cassette tapes? Because really nobody's really listening to LPs in the late 1970s. They're more into cassette tapes. And they just said, run along. We could care less. There's no copyright. Just do what you want to do with them because it's old. Okay, so I did. So I started putting advertisements in the National Catholic Register or Sunday Visitor and different Catholic periodicals with Archbishop Sheen's Life is Worth Living. And I think I sold it for $29.95. So $30, you got 25 cassette tapes. And like Father said, a little plastic, like a suitcase. And so I started selling those, and I was doing, hundreds of those a day. They were moving out. It's like I was shocked. I was having a hard time producing and getting them out. Well, just a few months after that, I went to the Religious Ed Congress in Los Angeles. And it's not known for its orthodoxy even back in the late 70s. And I was so excited. And here I am just in my early 20s. And I'm like, wow, I can't wait to get these Fulton Sheen cassettes out to the priests, especially because so they could preach, Christ and Him crucified. Hey, let's do it. So I get out there, young guy, man. I see a priest come by. I said, Father, you got to hear this. I've got Bishop Sheen's Life is Worth Living. This is going to be great material for your homilies. And he looks at me like almost in sympathy. He says to me, young man, you're wasting your time. What? Wasting my time. He says, Fulton Sheen is, I'll never forget, he used the word antiquated. Nobody needs to hear that man anymore. Well, I have great respect for people like you, dressed like you, Father Murr, but inside of me, it was fighting words, okay? I said to myself, Father, I said, well, Father, no problem. You have a great day. But inside of me, I said, I'm going to make him eat that. I am going to do. He got me so motivated to say, he's wrong. Fulton Sheen is just what the church needs today. So I started, promoting him back in the late 70s, and here it is, 2023. Now, not only Scott Hahn, but Dr. Scott Hahn. We started with just a number of audio recordings. Someone told me that they did the calculations. I really don't know, but they said over the years, you're well over 30 million recordings because the distribution that you had through Lighthouse Catholic Media and St. Joseph Communications. My point to you is any good that we do comes from God, and I thank Him for it. I mean, even my pastor just yesterday had a funny story. The pastor here at the Anglican Ordinariate Parish, he comes up to me and he says, Terry, you gave me your book. I read it. He said, I didn't know who you were. I said, well, now what are you talking about, Father? He says, I can't believe it. You helped me become a Catholic priest. Your recordings from St. Joseph Communications. He named a couple. And I said, well, Father, isn't it ironic? I think any good that we do comes from God. We thank Him. So my point to you is it was Fulton Sheen who motivated me to start doing the recordings and distributing Catholic recordings. And I know for a fact, hundreds of Catholic priests have told me the Called and Chosen series that was the priest retreat was instrumental in him becoming a Catholic priest, because we distributed back, 30 years ago, I did a campaign and I said, every Catholic priest in America gets that set of CDs, or cassette tapes back then, cassette tapes. And I know that it helped many priests live out their priesthood. So anyhow, that's why I'm so excited when Father Charles Murr said, hey, let's get once a week a time where we could do the Life of Christ book and introduce people to the person of Christ through his writings, because I can't think of a better person in my life that's touched me that can help people fall deep in love with Jesus. Now, that's my story. Now, Father, I just want to mention something about the prefix of the book of Life is Christ. Just the beginning, how Fulton Sheen says, Satan may appear in many disguises like Christ, and at the end of the world will appear as a benefactor or philanthropist, but Satan never has and never will appear with scars. Just what you were saying. Just what you were saying. He says, only heaven's love can show the marks of love's greatest gift in a night forever past. He says, actually, there are only two philosophies of life. One is first the feast, then the headache. The other is first the fast and then the feast. So I would encourage people to get a copy of this book, even if you don't, you're going to hear these shows, because I'm convinced, as great as Father Charles Murr is, or what we're going to say here, what's most important is that you read this book, The Life of Christ by Fulton Sheen, because he will introduce you to the person of Christ.
Terry, please don't tell them to count on my greatness.
I just wanted to say that the prefix.
Listen, I've got to show them something.
Yes.
You see this? You see this?
There it is. Yeah.
Are you seeing it on the monitor?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can see how old it is. Oh, yeah.
Here's the life of Christ.
Yeah.
Do you know whose book this was originally? This was Terry Barber's book.
It was an old book, but I got a brand new one in my hands now.
Oh, so you sent me the old one. You see how you are?
Yeah. Well, you know what happened? I
treasure it.
Father,
it's held together by tape.
Yeah, it is. It is. Wonderful. Because it's been used a lot. But you know what I want to say is I got so many books of Life of Christ from old Catholic libraries that people didn't want. Especially, I'll tell you the story. I got like 4,000 or 5,000 books from Manresa Retreat House. And there were so many books of Fulton Sheen in there. So I never... I thought I had like 6 or 7 copies of the Life of Christ, but the problem was I was always giving them to priests. I would always say, Father, this is a great book to read, and you'll get many insights for your preaching. And so when I went to look for it, I told my wife, I gave my old copy to Father Murr, but honey, could you help me find another copy of the Life of Christ? And she looks and says, we don't have it, Terry. Well, I said, what? We don't have that? So I said, well, I know it's online, so I got a brand new book. But the point I'm trying to convey to people, it's available. It's not out of print, okay? So first of all, people could say, is it out of print? No. Well, Father, your story of how Fulton Sheen, the retreat, by Bishop Sheen. I'm a layman. I listened to those priest retreats, and I was moved by how he would communicate the love of the Eucharist. I mean, I'm a layman, and I do my best to make a daily holy hour before the Blessed Sacrament. And the only reason I do is because Fulton Sheen told me this is going to help me be a better follower of Jesus Christ by spending time before the Blessed Sacrament. So I want to recommend to our listeners, even if it's 15 minutes a day, a half hour a day, that silent time before the Blessed Sacrament, there's nothing better.
Absolutely. But also you hit another point. You hit two points on it.
Tell me.
Well, you're always hitting.
No, that's Sheen. I'm going for it.
Sure. The first thing that I would recommend to anyone who's listening to purchase The Life of Christ, the book. There's tapes are wonderful.
Yeah.
Tapes are what helped me get reacquainted with Fulton J. Sheen and all. But reading really penetrates the soul and the intellect. It really does.